Welcome to the channel. Hold your breath, get comfortable, and listen to a mysterious story. Imagine this: a dark road, forest on both sides, and suddenly, in the headlights, you see a gigantic shadow. Red eyes stare straight at you, and wings rise toward the sky. This is the Mothman. His appearances always ended in disaster. In 1966, the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, descended into a nightmare. People were stalked by a mysterious winged monster with glowing red eyes. They called him the Mothman. He appeared suddenly, let out terrifying screeches, and was believed to be a harbinger of death. Was it a mutant, a creature from another world, or an ancient spirit? This story still frightens America to this day. After his appearances, a tragedy struck, taking dozens of lives. Coincidence? Or a sign that the legend was real? In 1966, residents of a small West Virginia town encountered an unknown being with burning red eyes. Was it real, or just a figment of imagination? And don't recent photographs suggest that it might have returned? Today we once again tell the legend of the Mothman. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. A small town with a big history. With just over 4,000 residents living on only 3 square miles of land, it feels more like a village than a town, surrounded by green hills and divided by the wide Ohio River. The place looks quiet, cozy, and pleasant. Yet it was here that one of the most unsettling events of the late 20th century occurred. In the late 1960s, reports began to emerge of a mysterious creature supposedly stalking locals on the outskirts of town and in the surrounding area. These encounters were so terrifying that some eyewitnesses suffered psychological trauma for years afterward. The first mention dates back to November 12, 1966. 5 gravediggers in the town of Clendenin saw a strange creature take flight from a grove of trees. It soared low over their heads before vanishing in the distance. 2 days later, Salem resident Newell Partridge spotted 2 glowing red objects near his home. As he drew closer, he realized they were the eyes of a dark figure perched in a tree. The creature launched into the sky with a piercing, bone-chilling scream. His dog, a German shepherd named Bandit, gave chase, and was never seen again. On November 15, 2 young married couples, Roger and Linda Scariest, and Steve and Mary Millette, burst into the Mason County Sheriff's Office in a panic. They claimed that, near the TNT area, abandoned World War II munitions bunkers, they had seen a tall gray figure, nearly 7 feet tall, with wings on its back. Nearby lay the body of a dog, believed to be Bandit. As their car passed, the creature rose into the air and began to follow them. Scariest accelerated to nearly 100 miles per hour, but the monster kept up. His wife insisted it was shrieking and staring at them with huge, glowing red eyes, like reflectors in the dark. Only when they reached town did the pursuit end. The next day, a press conference was held where the families gave detailed accounts. Biologist Robert Smith suggested it was simply a large heron that had strayed from its migration route. The eyewitnesses flatly rejected this explanation. Meanwhile, rumors of the Mothman spread rapidly. On November 16, the Walmsley family, along with Marcella Bennett and her young daughter, drove to visit friends. At the Thomas residence, their cars startled something huge and dark rising from the ground. It had bright red eyes. In terror, Marcella even dropped her child before quickly scooping her up and running into the house. The creature followed them, peering through the windows until the police arrived. Later, Marcella claimed that the Mothman also visited her home, and many times she heard its chilling cry. She suffered nightmares and psychological distress for years. The abandoned TNT area, dotted with concrete bunkers once used to store ammunition, became the place where the creature was most often seen. By the end of 1966, reports multiplied, reaching their peak in 1967. In December of that year, tragedy struck. The Silver Bridge over the Ohio River collapsed, plunging into the water and claiming 46 lives. And it was right after this disaster that all sightings of the Mothman abruptly ceased. Locals were convinced he had been a harbinger of doom. But who was he? A real being, an unknown monster, a bird, or an elaborate hoax to attract tourists? Skeptics lean toward the theory of a sandhill crane, a large bird standing up to 6 feet tall, with reddish markings around its eyes. Yet eyewitnesses insist, it was something else entirely. The creature was far too massive, with eyes that truly glowed and a flight that seemed unnatural. The legend of the Mothman lives on. For some, it is merely a myth. For others, proof that our world holds mysteries beyond explanation. Over the Ohio River, in the very heart of West Virginia, lies the quiet town of Point Pleasant. On the map, it seemed like just a dot, a few streets, a couple of churches, a gas station, and some stores. It looked like the kind of place where nothing extraordinary could ever happen, where time itself seemed to slow down. But it was here, in the silence of the hills and dense forests, that one of America's most terrifying legends was born. Life in town went on as usual. Days filled with work and chores, evenings quiet, only the occasional bark of a dog or the soft whisper of the wind. But in November 1966, that peace was shattered. At first, there were strange rumors. Then came frightened testimonies. And soon, panic gripped the townspeople, who no longer dared step outside after dark. They said there was something in the woods. Not a beast, not a man. A creature with wings, dark and enormous, with eyes glowing like burning coals. It moved silently, like a shadow, and only sometimes let out a piercing, inhuman scream that cut straight to the soul. The first to see it were gravediggers. 5 men were working in a cemetery near Clendenin when something dark burst out of the trees. At first they thought it was a large bird, but then they saw the silhouette was far too human. It flew low, so close their hair stood on end. None of them wanted to believe what they had witnessed, yet their faces were pale as marble when they told the story. 2 days later, Salem resident Newell Partridge sat at home when he noticed 2 glowing red lights outside his window. Stepping into the yard, his heart froze in terror. They were eyes. Immense, unblinking, burning in the darkness. They belonged to a figure perched high in a tree. Then the black body launched into the air with a scream so blood-curdling that it froze his veins. His dog, a German shepherd named Bandit, gave chase, and vanished forever. From that night on, Newell swore, it was no animal, but something entirely otherworldly. But the true panic began on November 15th. 2 young couples were driving home late at night. Their path took them past the abandoned TNT area, its wartime concrete bunkers swallowed by forest. And there, blocking the road, stood the creature. Gray, enormous, as tall as, or taller than, a man, with wings folded behind its back. At its feet lay a dead dog. As the car approached, it spread its wings and soared into the air. It gave chase, as if toying with them. The car sped down the road at nearly 100 miles per hour, yet the monster kept pace. Its eyes blazed like two spotlights, and the air filled with a piercing, unearthly screech. Only when they neared the edge of town did the pursuer vanish, dissolving into the night. The next day, the entire town was talking about it. Newspapers wrote of a strange beast, and on the radio people whispered about the Mothman. Some laughed it off as fantasy, while others locked their doors and drew their curtains tight, afraid of seeing red eyes glowing in the window. But soon the legend took on flesh and blood. People began to see him again and again. He peered into windows, circled above houses, watched from the woods. Those who encountered him said the same thing: he was enormous, his eyes burned into the soul, and his scream drained all strength. Some could not sleep for years after such meetings. And the most terrifying thing of all, his appearance always seemed to foreshadow disaster. A year later, in December 1967, the Silver Bridge collapsed. Dozens of cars plunged into the icy water, 46 people died. And it was precisely after this tragedy that the Mothman vanished. As if he had fulfilled his purpose. As if he were a messenger, a prophet of catastrophe. But did he truly disappear? Or is he only waiting for the hour to return once more? Now the night of November 15 to 16, 1966. A windy road near the abandoned TNT area. Car headlights caught fragments of asphalt, faded road signs, overgrown shoulders swallowed by weeds. Inside the vehicle lingered the smell of cheap tobacco and gasoline. The men had just filled the tank, planning to drive their wives home. Mary Millette adjusted her warm knitted scarf, her hands trembling. November nights here were already cold. Beside her, Linda Scarberry clutched her purse tightly, as though afraid it might be snatched from her fingers. The men, jackets buttoned and collars turned up, exchanged jokes to fight off drowsiness. Suddenly, the headlights revealed a figure. It stood by the roadside, motionless. At first, it looked like a man, tall, dressed in gray, with something like a cloak shifting behind him. But as the car drew closer, they all realized at once, it was not a cloak. They were wings. Enormous, folded, their ragged edges as though scorched by fire. The figure did not move. It tilted its head slightly, like a bird sizing up its prey. And then, the eyes ignited, two fiery red orbs, glowing as bright as headlights, only alive, pulsing. Roger Scarberry jerked the wheel. Tires squealed, the car swerved, the women screamed. The vehicle shot past, and in the rearview mirror Linda caught a glimpse. At the creature's feet lay the body of a dead dog. Then it rose. The wings unfolded with a sound like fabric being torn apart. The thing lifted above the road and, an instant later, was beside the car. It did not flap its wings, as if some invisible force carried it. It drifted through the air, peering through the windows. Its face, if it could be called a face, was hidden in shadow. But its eyes burned like molten metal. "Faster!" shouted Steve Millette, clutching Roger's shoulder. The car hurtled forward, nearing 100 miles per hour. But the creature did not fall behind. It seemed to glide effortlessly above the ground, exhaling not air but a long, metallic screech, like steel scraping against glass. The women screamed, covering their faces with their hands. Linda remembered how her fingers went white from the force with which she gripped the seat. Roger clenched his jaw so hard it swelled for days. None of them could believe their eyes. The monster kept pace with the car, locked in the beam of its headlights, as if mocking them. And only when the lights of the town appeared in the distance did it fall back. As if the very presence of people repelled it. For a moment, it hovered in the air, wings spread wide, then suddenly darted back into the darkness, back to where the crumbling TNT bunkers waited, hidden among the forest. The next day, the town was buzzing. People argued over what had happened. Not everyone dared to believe. The newspaper wrote of a giant crane that had strayed from migration. But those who had seen the red eyes knew. It was no bird. And with each day, more and more witnesses came forward. 2 days later, Marjorie Bennett, a woman in her 40s, was walking with a baby carriage to her sister's house. She wore a long coat and a white wool beret. The evening was cold, her breath escaping in clouds of steam. She walked slowly, rocking her daughter in the carriage. At her sister's house, she stopped to lift the child. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. Heavy, uneven, as though someone were dragging their feet. She turned, and froze in horror. From behind the bushes rose something enormous. At first, it looked like a man in a long coat. But when it stepped closer, she saw the coat was moving, trembling, alive. Wings. The creature tilted its head, and its eyes burst into red flame. Marjorie screamed, dropped the child to the ground, then snatched her up again and bolted for the house. The thing followed. Slowly, unhurriedly, as if it knew she had nowhere to run. She slammed the door shut and clutched her daughter to her chest, gasping for air. A silhouette passed the window. 2 glowing red points slid across the glass, up and down. It was peering inside. The Thomas children shrieked and hid behind the furniture. When the police arrived, the creature had vanished. But the window frame bore marks, deep scratches, as if claws had raked the wood. From then on, Marjorie could hardly sleep. She swore it returned. She heard it scream outside her window. Sometimes the scrape of claws against the wall. Sometimes shadows moving in the garden when the moon rose above the hills. December 1966. Frosty nights wrapped themselves around Point Pleasant. In the little wooden houses with porches, residents pulled curtains tight and bolted doors earlier than usual. No one wanted to be outside after dark. One evening, the town seamstress, Joan Harris, was walking home in her long navy coat. On her head, a hat with a veil, her hands hidden in knitted gloves. In her arms she carried a bundle of fabrics. The snow crunched under her heels, the air thick and damp. Then came a strange sound. Not footsteps. Not breathing. A faint rustling, as if the wings of a giant moth brushed against the branches. Joan froze. First she saw only a shadow, tall, stretched, with long shapes protruding at the sides. Then, the eyes. They flared up right in front of her, among the black trees. Joan dropped the bundle in terror, fabric spilled across the snow, staining the whiteness with bright colors. She staggered back, hands trembling. The creature stepped forward. Its movements were slow, as though it were gliding above the ground rather than touching it. Its wings quivered but did not beat. It cocked its head. She saw the black silhouette of a face, featureless, except for those burning eyes. She thought they were breathing, swelling and contracting, pulling her into an abyss. Joan screamed and ran. Her coat whipped behind her, the veil tore from her head, but she never looked back. Only when she burst into her home and slammed the door did she hear it, a long, drawn-out screech over the roof, like the cry of a man mixed with the grinding of metal. Around the same time, Farmer Henry McDougall went out to check his tool shed. He wore an old wool sweater, a greasy jacket, and knee-high boots. A lantern in his hand cast a dim light along the path, while chimney smoke drifted on the wind. Opening the shed door, Henry immediately sensed something move inside. He thought it was rats. But when he raised the lantern higher, he saw it. In the corner, among hanging sacks, crouched the creature. Its wings were folded but stretched across half the wall. Its body hunched, knees jutting upward, long arms reaching the floor. It looked like a dark man, but its skin was gray, glossy, like that of the dead. When the light touched its face, the eyes ignited. Henry flinched, stumbling back. The creature spread its wings, releasing a foul stench, a mix of dampness, rot, and something metallic. The lantern slipped from his hands. The lamp shattered. Darkness swallowed everything. In that pitch black, Henry heard breathing, heavy, rasping, right behind him. He bolted out into the night without even shutting the door. The shed stood silent, but the farmer swore, whatever sat in there, it was watching him. Rumors spread like wildfire. People claimed to have seen the winged man, on rooftops, along roadsides, and near the old TNT bunkers. Sometimes he only watched. Sometimes he followed cars, never falling behind, no matter how fast they sped. But there were even darker stories. Residents claimed his presence was always accompanied by strange signs: electrical appliances failed, lights flickered, radios crackled with static, and strange voices no one recognized. Some people were suddenly struck with blinding headaches or nosebleeds. And always, the red eyes. Two blazing orbs, burning through the darkness. Do you want me to go on? I can make this story even longer, adding new encounters where the Mothman grew more aggressive, peering into windows, stalking people through the streets, leaving behind strange marks. Slowly, the tale would build toward the disaster at the bridge, with the monster looming as a harbinger of doom. Winter in Point Pleasant became a season of fear. People no longer went outside at night without flashlights and dogs, yet even the dogs behaved strangely. They howled, trembled, pulled at their leashes, as if sensing something invisible. In early December, the Johnson family sat by the fireplace in their wooden home. The mother knitted, the father read the newspaper, the two children played on the rug. Outside, the frost snapped, but inside all seemed peaceful. Then the lamps began to flicker. The radio on the shelf hissed, spat, and emitted a sharp crackle. A voice broke through the static. Not English, not human. A whisper in some unknown tongue, long and wailing. The father leapt up, rushed to the window, and froze. Right outside, just a meter from the glass, hung a shape. Enormous wings swayed in the wind. Eyes blazed red, casting bloody reflections across the curtains. The creature wasn't standing on the ground, it was hovering in the air. Its long clawed fingers touched the glass, slowly dragging across it, leaving behind a deep scratch, as though the window had been cut with a knife. The children screamed, the mother dropped her knitting needles, the father tore open the door, ready to confront the intruder. But when he burst outside, the yard was empty. Only snow. Snow crisscrossed with tracks. But the tracks were wrong. Far too big for a man's, marked with long claw prints, as though something barely brushed the earth with the tips of its limbs. A week later, by the river, a hunter named Charles Reed faced the monster himself. Charles, a sturdy man in an old army coat with a rifle slung over his shoulder, was returning from the hunt when he saw a dark figure perched on the railing of an old bridge. It did not move until he drew closer. Then it turned. Red eyes flared so brightly that Charles shielded his face with his hand. The thing rose to its full height, nearly 8 feet tall. Its wings were folded, but still brushed the ground. It took a step. Its movement was awkward yet unnervingly fast, like it shifted forward in jerks. Its claws scraped against the metal rail, throwing sparks. Charles lifted his rifle and fired. The blast thundered over the river. The creature only flinched, then suddenly hurled itself upward, wings unfolding with a sound like tearing cloth. It shot into the sky, leaving behind the stench of burning and ozone. And in the snow, a drop remained. Not blood, but a thick black fluid. It did not soak in. It did not melt. With each passing week, the stories multiplied. Some saw him perched on rooftops. Others spotted him lurking along the roadside, staring through car windows as though waiting, watching. Who is he, the Mothman? Since the first witnesses in Point Pleasant saw the creature with burning eyes, many decades have passed. Yet the question remains unanswered: who is he really? Skeptics insist that everything can be explained logically. They believe people only saw a bird, a heron or a crane blown off its usual path by a storm. In the darkness, frightened townsfolk, already caught up in panic, transformed the silhouette into a monster. The wings seemed larger, the eyes brighter. And fear did the rest. But those who encountered it face to face swear otherwise. They insist it could not have been a bird. Too tall. Too powerful wings. Too terrifying a scream, one impossible to forget. And above all, that unbearable feeling, as if the creature could reach into their very thoughts. There are other theories. Some believe the Mothman is a prophetic spirit, a messenger whose purpose is to warn people of coming disasters. Not an enemy, but a harbinger, though humans, blinded by fear, mistake him for a monster. Others think he is a demon, an ancient evil that feeds on calamity. He appears wherever pain and death are strongest, to gorge on the energy of human souls. And some are convinced the Mothman does not belong to our world at all. That he is a being from another reality, a place beyond human understanding, breaking through into ours by accident, leaving only terror and questions behind. What is striking is that with each passing decade, the legend only grows stronger. New testimonies emerge, new photographs, new rumors. Some laugh them off, others collect them piece by piece as proof that we are not alone. And in Point Pleasant, you can still hear stories from the old witnesses. They do not shout about their experiences, nor seek fame. But when a strange cry echoes over the river at night, and someone sees 2 glowing red lights in the darkness, people remember the old legend again. And here lies the main question: if the Mothman truly exists, does it mean he will return whenever a new disaster threatens the world? Perhaps one day, looking out the window, someone will see a silhouette with wings and burning eyes in the night. And by then, it will be too late to ask, is he an enemy or a messenger? And so the question endures: if the Mothman is real, does he return whenever catastrophe approaches? Will there come a night when someone, gazing out their window, sees a shadow with vast wings and eyes burning like coals. And if that night comes, will it already be too late to ask, is he our enemy, or our warning? Thus ends the tale of the Mothman. But the legend lives, whispering on the wind. And so long as it survives, so too does the promise that one day the red-eyed creature will be seen again. Herald of tragedy, omen of doom. Thus ends the story of the Mothman. But the legend lives on, and that means one day we will hear again of the red-eyed creature whose appearance always foretells tragedy. And if you ever hear that dreadful metallic scream in the silence, remember, perhaps he is already near.